Okay, I want to show you, I am on bag B, but before I get any further, by this time you have already cut your pieces out, and what I wanted to show you is these are my pockets. This is the front of my bag, and on my pockets I just cut it on the fold, and I put my batting inside of here and pressed it together so that I didn't have to sew it. I didn't want to turn it down and sew it. Per the instructions, I wanted it just to be a nice little flat like this. Okay, so this is one piece, two piece, and then my fold. You can do bags with contrast if you want to, but I'm going to stick with this because I'm going to do my straps completely in white. What I've also done is I've gone and I cut my batting and I pressed it onto the bag section first. I pressed it on. You never sew on this side, so don't sew on that side. You always sew on this side. I'm sorry, iron on that side. I'll get it straight in a minute. Once I had my batting sewed, and I had my batting sewed in here, the next thing I did is I went around. See if I can show you all this. The camera is kind of wonky. That little, I don't know if you can see it or not because this ribbon's taking spot. So let me see if I can move this just a tad. Seems like something's taking up my section here. Alright, so what I've done is I've actually sewn the bag. I went ahead and sewed all the way around the edges. Okay, and this is on just this bag first. Okay, so I put this on top of this bag and I sewed around the edges. And then I sewed across the bottom and I came around these edges. It's okay for this bag for right now to sew this area on. When you put your liner in and when you hook your bag together, that's when you're going to put these little sides together right here. So once I got my two pieces done, then I turn around and I put these two pieces together like this, and I sewed right down this side only. And I did a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I was able to press this seam open, as you can see, and then the directions, you can do this either way. I did mine on this side. I sewed right down about a 1/4 inch away from the seam. So here's my initial seam, and all I did, I don't know if you see this, the threading right here, I reinforced it right down this way so the bag lays nice and flat. What I did with the lining that would have gone on here that I'm going to submit later is I actually put it together completely. This is my liner. So these are just the two bag pieces together, and I sewed all the way around. I left the little opening here. That's this opening right here, so that when I pieced it together later, whenever I had this sewed, I just kind of pieced it together like that. So when that's sewn, it's going to look like that. You just piece it together. Okay, so I went ahead and finished this bag. Now on the bottom I did a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I only sewed, I left an opening right here, so I sewed from end to end just a little bit, from this end to here. I feel like I'm backwards here. And I left this hole because later on when I put this bag inside of here, I'm going to be able to look through the hole and pull my bag through, and then I'll show you how to do that later. Once it goes through, then the lining goes in and you flip it around completely inside your bag, and it's going to look like a nice little liner where you don't see any of the seams. So it's really going to be nice and pretty. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on my straps, because those are the things I need to put on next. Since I've got my bag where I need it right now, I'm going to work on my straps first. Now, you may, and this is again bag B, if you're doing straps, then you need to look at your pattern, because there's a marking that you need to put here somewhere so that your straps line up straight. You can get the pattern back out, or if you prefer, you can make your own marking. It doesn't really matter. I mean, as long as it's straight. And then you're going to make sure that you do not go above this line, because you're going to have to stop right here on your straps. What I mean by that is this is the last stitch you're going to make. So your straps are going to fold down. And when you see me sew that, you're going to see how that's done. I'm going to pause the video for now, and I'm going to switch over and show you how to do the straps. Okay, so what I have here are my straps, and I have my interfacing. And the interfacing is just going to stabilize the straps to make them a little bit more sturdier. And if I've been working with you, then I'm having you cut your straps a little bit longer and a little bit more with those. So the first strap, I'm going to unfold it and I'm going to start pressing. And again, remember, do not press the iron onto this. It's just going to melt it worse. You need to turn over and press on the actual fabric. You'll notice that the rough edges on your interfacing is got the adhesive on it, so you want to push that down. Still, don't iron over this because it's not going to come out very smooth. Make sure also before you start ironing your interfacing that you take out the creases in your fabric. So this was on the faux when I cut it. That's how your pattern calls for on the straps. That way when you open them up, you get an extra long strap here. So I'm going to go ahead and try to press that out. Get some steam. Although it seems to be out of steam, I'm going to have to pause and go get some steam. Okay, so I've got the steam in my iron and I've already pressed out this crease here. So the next thing I'm going to do is put my interfacing on, rough edge down, and I'm going to flip the strap over so I can make sure that this adheres to the fabric once I press over it. Sometimes if you use steam on the batting material, it does well. When you use it on this, if it gets too wet, it'll dilute the adhesive where it won't stick. So I would recommend turning your iron, turning the steam off. You don't know where that's on your setting. It is right, well, can't see that, can you? It's right here. That's the off switch. So just turn this little thing over and you'll get no steam. So we're going to try that. You just kind of go down the edges. Okay. So I'm going to do this with each one of my pieces. As you can see, it's sticking on there, and that's fine. So I'm not going to start folding it yet because I want to get all my pieces in one long strip. And from that, I'm going to kind of look, measure it around my bag to see if this is the length I want. Sometimes these straps are too short. So yes, I'm going ahead and making these a little bit longer. So I'm going to go ahead and press each one of these out. And then I'm going to go to the machine and start sewing these ends together, and I'm going to give it a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to press that open. You always press open your seam allowance so that your pieces lay flat. Sticky end is going to be facing the material on the opposite side. You do not want to iron over interfacing or the batting because it will get all over your iron and make it all nice and gummy where you can't clean it, or it would be impossible. It's almost like getting roasting marshmallows and getting all over your clothes. Nasty. Kind of hard to get out. If you find that you have some overlapping, don't worry about it. That's going to all work out in the end. So just reinforcing my pieces right now. And again, once I hook this all together, if it's too long, then I can cut off the excess that I want, but I'd rather have enough now than not enough later. And when you get to your straps, I'll show you how to cut multiple pieces at one time. It makes it a whole lot easier when you're trying to get those strips cut and you're like, I don't want to go through pinning this thing down 4 or 5 times, when you can actually fold your material over a couple times, 2 or 3 times, and then put that pattern piece down on that fold, and then you have multiple strips that you're cutting all at one time. Very easy. Okay. And I got my last strip. I'm going to steam out that, so I'm going to have to turn my steam on so I can get that out. I'm going to turn my steam off. I'm going to press the interfacing on. This is really nice to use. It's something you're going to get used to using when you start getting into advanced sewing. We use a lot of interfacing to stabilize collars, the necklines of dresses and other wearable items that have no collars to them. So you have interfacing in just about anything. If you have a collared or button-down collared shirt, then you notice that the collar is very stiff. That's because it has interfacing inside of it. Okay, I'm going to pause. I'm going to say, okay, I'm getting ready to sew. And anytime you sew, you always sew inside outwards. That's the rule of thumb. So this is my fabric side. I'm going to place my fabric side down on top of my fabric. I've got a little bit of interfacing that's hanging over. I'm just going to go through and just kind of snip that off and throw it in the garbage. Don't leave it on the table or the floor, please. And just put this on the machine. And again, I'm going to do a 1/2 inch. Now the machine does not have a 1/2 inch marking, so you'll have to put that on there. I just want to show you what I'm doing here. If you can see that or not. Nicely not done there. Wet hands, not good. Alright. Still not a very good shot there. Try. We're going to get this together today sometime. There we go. Alright, so when you're sewing, I may have told you this, you need to start getting used to this if you haven't done so yet. When you put your needle down, it needs to start on this side because you need for that stitch to come over. And you're going to get into the habit once you start piecing garments together that you're going to back stitch. Maybe stitch forward, back stitch to reinforce that. So I'm just going to go forward, and then I'm going to hold that down and back stitch. That's just going to reinforce my stitch. Then I'm going to come forward all the way, 1/2 inch. You may have to mark your sewing machine because mine's not marked. I'm going to follow through all the way to the end and go all the way over the fabric. Hold my button, my backup button, and go back because I just want to reinforce that end. Then I'm going to snip off, of course, my strays. That's your little stragglers. I wish I had little snipping shears for everybody, but I don't. If you get some of the new shears that we just had sharpened, wonderful. They snip really well. So here you have it. I have my 1/2 inch seam. Whenever I get all these pieces together, I'm going to go over to the iron board and I'm going to press those open just like you did your boxers. So nothing different. The only thing is on my end, I did a back stitch on the edges just to reinforce both ends of my pieces. So I just went back and forth right here, just one time. Sewn all the way through, follow through, came to the end, then I went back and forth just one time over that just to reinforce it. Alright, I'm going to pause because I'm going to do this on each one of my pieces right now. Okay, right now I have all my strips sewn together. I don't have them pressed open yet because I want to see on my bag, because I'm doing bag B. It's a little bit smaller than, am I doing bag B? Maybe it's bag A. I'm just going to see if I like the length of the straps. So I'm going to just wrap this around. I don't have to be perfect. I'm going to stick a pin here just so I can just give myself a little look-see if I'm going to like it. And no, they're not going to be this wide. I'm going to eventually press the two together, but I want to see first if my length's going to be good enough for me. So I'm going to just fold this over and give it a look-see. So as you can see, my straps are a little bit way too long. But this is why I said go ahead and sew what you need, because you don't know. Because one more may not be enough for me, and I want it to be a little bit longer. So I'm just going to adjust my straps by just cutting couple of these pieces right here. I don't think I want to cut off a whole section. I can see, because the pattern initially called for just 2 little sections, but I don't think that's going to be enough. Or it could be 3. I'm going to try just 3 sections, see if I need to cut off 1. So I'm initially just pinning together the 3 sections to see if that's enough. So I'm going to lay those there, and it already looks like it could be possibly enough. So cutting 3 may be just right. I'm going to piece my bag together and bring up my straps. So it looks like I can get by really easily with just the 3 straps. So that'll give me a little idea how long they're going to be. So just the 3 straps is going to be that long. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work with that, meaning I'm going to cut off, I'm going to go ahead and trim off this strap here that I really don't need, that I've sewn together, and just do away with it. Alright, so my next step, there goes waste, is I'm going to now go over to the machine and I'm going to press this. So think of this like you were hemming your pants. So after I press open all these butterfly, press those flat, because it always gives a really smooth look. I'm going to press mine in like this, and you can go a little bit smaller if you can get it to work, and press that in. Then I'm going to bring these 2 pieces together, and I'm going to press it with an iron all the way down till my straps are like that. I will probably put some pins in here. I'm going to see how well it presses together, because we have that interfacing. It might give us a really nice press when we do the steam iron. So I'm going to do this width all the way down on this. So I probably, and I don't have, see my tape measure, I probably went in maybe a 1/4 of an inch on both sides, and then I fold it over to meet the other side. And I'm going to sew all the way down here when I get this pressed on this edge. And I'm also going to sew down all the way on this edge. So I think I'm going to do that once I have, it pinned on my bag, so I don't have a whole lot of seams and stitches running down. So I'll probably press this, then find my markings on my bag, and I'm going to show you how that's done, because this is going to be a complete circle. So I will be back and after I press this and show you how to pin that circle down. Okay, I wanted to come back and show you that I've pressed in my sides. I haven't finished folding them over just yet, because I need to connect this to the other end. So I'm going to make sure that I keep this straight. I'm going to come around, keeping it straight, and I'm just going to pin or sew these 2 pieces together. So I'm just going to open up the little sections that I pressed. Now you can go ahead and sew this if you want to. I just find it easier to work down the line when I'm pressing, because it's such a huge strip. Okay, so I'm going to open my flaps that I just pressed open, and I'll get to change that in a minute. So reaching in here to the machine so I can connect those 2 pieces together, and as I'm going around and folding these flaps together, I'll make sure I butterfly press that one section open as well. Okay. And I'll get that when I finish off going around there. Okay, I'm going to snip off all these strings nice and neat, and I'll go back and butterfly press that open, and then work my way around this again. So that's what I'm about to do. I am going to start working my way around, and I'm just going to bring these 2 pieces together like so, and I'm going to start steaming that, and then I'll start pinning a few pieces together, and then I'll eventually come out here and mark on my bag where I'm going to put my straps, because it's important that I have a stopping point. But before you do that, when you get this all nicely pressed out all the way around, it's going to look like this. It's going to look like really nice little straps coming around. You're going to balance them out and make sure you have enough on both sides. And then when you find your center section, you can go ahead and go ahead and sew that down just to keep it stabilized while you're working through these sections here, because you're going to end up sewing this down and stopping. You can make like a little box here, then come back down here all the way to this end. But you're going to leave about this much here, so it's going to be important that you pin so that you have enough here that doesn't get in the way where you're going to put the zipper and everything in later. So yeah, this takes some time. You have to be very patient and be very careful that you keep your hands away from the steam. I know that seems easier said than done, but if you work a little fold like this, put your iron down and come down here and fold, and by the time you get your press your iron down here, get away from it, press it down and fold, get away from it, and then keep on going around. So now I'm going back to my press, and I'm going to get this all nice and neatly pressed together like that, so I can start pinning my bag together. Okay, I'm going to pause this. Alright, I've got my straps done, as you can see, and I pinned them just to keep them stabilized until I pin them to the fabric where I need them to go. So I went and got a pocket out of a bag A. Now bag B and bag A are sewn exactly the same. The only difference is the size of the bag. So here I'm going to go ahead and just kind of move my straps out of the way, and I'm just going to pin this right here where the pocket's at. I've already sewn the pockets, it's not a problem, because I'm going to go ahead and put my markings here. I'm going to line my pocket up, and I'm going to see if that's enough room from the edge, which it's not. So let's see if I can come down. I just want to come down probably about 2 inches from the top, and that's where I'm going to put my marking at. You can do 2.5, 2 inches, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to do 2. So I'm going to take my pencil, I'm going to use a pencil and just get a little bit of a marking right here where this line's at. That's going to tell me, that's going to guide me on where I need to put. Make sure I did that too. Okay. And where I'm going to actually put my straps. Okay, that's going to be the last place I sewed, right there. I'm going to do this on both ends. And I'm using this line right here because that's your strap line. I'm just using it to kind of guide me. And I'm going to put that in the center. And 2 inches from the top, where that line is supposed to be at. And I'm going to move that over, make sure I have it lined up. I'm just going to put a faint line on it. I'm going to fold this over and see if my lines actually match up. Okay. I just had to go grab a pattern out to see. So I'm going to fold my pieces like this. I'm just going to lift up to see, in fact, if my dots match up with it, which they do. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a dot, and then here's a dot. So this is going to represent the stopping point on the top of where I'm going to stop sewing. I'm not going to follow through all the way because I need room for the zipper. So now what I need to do is get my strap, and I need to try to find a center point. So I'll make sure the strap is laid flat. Now you're not sewing anything together just yet. And here is my little notch right there. So that's where my and I can put it on the side right here if I want to, which I think if I want to move it over here I can, but that's going to give me a little bit, it's going to put me too close to the edge, so I'm going to move it right here, right on top of that. And so this is where you're just going to have to play with it for a while, meaning you're just going to have to stick it, and you're just going to have to measure. I'm just going to put a pin just like that right through my seam. It's not going to go anywhere. From here, I want to pull my strap straight. Make sure my straps are straight. Here we go. Don't let you come straight to me. Something got twisted. Okay. Alright. Now I'm just going to see if I feel like this is going to be a good width, so I can just stretch it like this on a flat surface, and then let my pen stay. And from point to point, I want to see how much I have. So I have about 11 1/4 of strap on that end. So I'm going to flip this around, and I'm going to see if I have 11. I'm just eyeballing it right now, so I may have to adjust it. So my pins are still there. I know where they go. Stick it down in there. I'm going to measure this over here. Looks like a lot of trouble, but you want it to be even, or it's going to feel not going to feel comfortable when you're actually carrying your bag around. And plus, you want to do it right. All right, so on this side, I have 11 3/4. So I'm going to have to take out about 1/4 inch on this side. So I'm going to have to move that up. Move my pin here and stick it back down in there. And I'm just moving it 1/4 inch up and stick that down there. Let's see what I have here now. So from end to end, this is my one. I have almost 11 1/2. So hopefully I have 11 1/2 on this side. My pin stays still. Okay, good. So I have 11. I don't have 11 1/2. Let me see what I did wrong. Okay, so I have 11, just a little over, so I need to bump it back just a tad. There we go. Alright. And I can see my markings, so I know how far I'm moving it, just on this, barely a centimeter. Alright, so I'm going to turn this upside down again, see what I got from end to end, 11 1/2. So I'm just going to slide it down and stay in place. Pull, and that's 11 1/2. Okay, so I've got 11 1/2 now on both sides of my strap, so I'm good to go. Now I can start pinning and matching up where I want to go. Alright, I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, so after some consideration, I know this is going to be my center point, and I realize I'm going to have to go ahead and sew this around. I didn't want to have a whole lot of seams in here, but that's okay. So what I'm going to go do now is go around the edge of my circle, and I'm going to sew close to the edge as I possibly can from where I have it pressed. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and mark my spot right here so that I know that goes right down my crease, because that made my straps even. So just a little marking. This is pencil, it'll wash off and you can erase it. It's no big deal. Okay, I'm going to pause and I'm going to go ahead and get the machine and start sewing. Okay, so I have my straps sewn, and I have a little mistake right here, but not enough for me to take it out and redo it. So when you put the bag on, like here's my portions that I'm pinning down. If you notice my little hem that I pin in, it stays on the outer circle all the way around, because you want to make sure that when you pin this and you come around the top circle, that you have your strap like this, and that when you come around, it's gonna come like this. And then here's where my other pin's at. This is where my other marking's at, and I'm going to make sure that I have these even. I'm just going to eyeball them later and see if I see I'm not on that markings, but I can at least see it when I start sewing. So I'm going to follow through and pin and keep everything straight all the way around and make sure that's laying flat so that I have my strap like that. Okay, Now if you're using any type of batting, be very careful. It's super thick, and sometimes it's hard to get these needles to go through. Just be careful when you're pushing them through the bag that you don't break it or have it fly off in your eye. I'm trying to get my marking. I try to push it down towards the table. You got to have a strong one, of course, and that's not very strong. So again, here's my marking, and I come through and push up. Keep your fingers out of the way when you push up. And as you can see, I don't have a whole lot of pins. I have my center pins just to stabilize the centerpiece. I have my pins up here, my markings where I'm going to sew last, because I'm not going to go past this area when I sew. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to make like a little box here. Now I may come up just a little bit above it. Now this is when I sew this down, this is going to turn this into a pocket, this into a pocket by itself, and this is going to be a pocket by itself. Make sure that if you have any little stragglers through here that you cut them out. Notice we're pitting the straps on before we sew the sides down, because you have to have that done first. And then when you sew the straps down, you're going to start here. You can go over the seam that you just did, come here, turn your bag, and then go down this seam right here. And then close it off. Repeat that on this other side. Start here. You can start here, go across, pivot, come down, all the way down, stop, pivot, then come down on that seam right there, and then stop. That will get your straps on, and then once your straps are on, you'll be able to tuck these straps down the pockets to get them out of your way while you're working on piecing the sides together. Once the sides are put together, you do not mess with this section right here at this point. And we're going to put the sides together, then we're going to box these off closed, and then we're going to move from there to get the lining in. I'm going to pause while I sew these on. So I thought I'd go ahead and demonstrate just one side on how to sew this down. Now, anytime I'm sewing, I always put my needle down because it stabilizes the fabric, which you can see it's doing it right now, until I get ready to sew. So anytime I stop and go, I turn my needle down just so it stabilizes my fabric. So that way I can kind of adjust to see where I'm at, and I can kind of see that I need to pull my strap in just a little bit because it's too far out to this edge here. Okay. And now that I'm stabilized, I'm okay, I can move it. Now I'm going to drop my foot, pull my needle out because that's where I want to be positioned. I'm going to follow this seam all the way down, keeping the strap as straight as I possibly can. So I'm basically just going over the same seam that I created when I sewed the pieces together to try to minimize the amount of sewing seams you actually see that I have in here. Just trying to keep this all straight. Now, as I come to the middle section, obviously it's going to be a little bit tight. So I'm going to slow down. I don't want to break a needle. And I want it to go through the thickness of that area. Okay, and I'm on the other side. So I'm going to move this over where the original marking's at. So that's where I figured I was going to put it at anyways. And just lay it flat. And sometimes just work with it. Just keep it nice and smooth while you're working through this. Don't pull, don't tug. Let the machine pull. You steer and guide to keep everything flat and straight. Okay. I'm about to get to my marking, which is right here, my finger's at. I'm going to stick my needle down. I do this all the time so that I can look underneath. I want to make sure I'm going to lift my foot and make sure I am on my spot, which I am. This way I can pivot and my needle's still down and secure, and I don't have to move anything. It's straight. I'm going to go across, and I'm going to stop, and I'm going to watch it till I get close to the edge where I don't want to get too far away. My needle's still down, so it secures my spot where I need to be, and I'm going to pivot once again. Now, you're not going to get away from having the bulk of this fabric sometimes facing the inside of your machine. That's okay, just as long as you keep everything straight as it's going through. Okay, so I'm going to come down. Now, right in this area, I did not make a box. I can come back and reinforce that through here if I want to. It's just by preference. If you want to do that, you can put like a little X there on that section too, but it's not necessary. As long as it's reinforced and it stays in there nicely. Again, I'm just pinching making sure that my straps are on here nicely. I'm following it on the edge, trying not to get off. And sometimes I just want to slow down because, see, you can't see, but the bulk of my pattern that's over here, it's kind of getting bogged down, so I'm just going to have to readjust and make sure it stays nice and flat as I'm working through here. So I don't know if you can see it. Sometimes I have to hold it like this because there's too much going through the machine on this side, and I don't want this to get all messed up. So I'm just going to kind of hold it as I'm working through here. If you can see that seal, here we go. This white strap on this pink and white polka dots is really cute. Okay, so I'm going over this section here that's really bulky, and I'm going to go slow. There we go. You don't want to go too fast. You can break a needle. It can get all jumbled up underneath. Just make sure every time you're sewing that you're cutting off and trashing all those pieces of string that you see. So you want to get all those out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to keep working my way through. I think I went off just a little bit. So I'm going to make sure I try to keep this all nice and flat. And I may go through here and press this out again before I complete the bag. So I'm staying right on the edge to give it a nice finish. Working my way, just keep it as straight as I possibly can. Nothing bulky enough on me, so it's really good. So I'm going to come right down here. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to pivot once again, and then we're going to close this side off, and this particular side will be completed. So like I said, I'm not going to go and reinforce. That's not necessary unless you really want to. Alright. Now you can hit the reverse button, which I'm going to do that just to reinforce the tops of my straps to make sure that they're not going to come apart if I have any weight of any kind in it. And you can't hardly see that, so it's really nice. It just reinforces it. If you don't know where your reverse button is, joing. That's right. That's really nice. You can't see that. Can you? It's backwards. It's kind of dark and it's beautiful. Can't see it. Alright, not a worries. Well, I'll show you in class. Alright, so that's one side down and one to go. Okay, pull that strap through. And I'm going to flip it over. Kind of give you this is what it looks like. So it's nice and snug there. So it gets that way. You see it really nice. Okay, so there we go. There's my straps. I'm just on the one side. As I said, you don't have to, and I make sure I got that even. You don't have to go all the way up because you don't want to anyways, because you're going to be having a 1/2 inch seam allowance here when you piece the bags together and you put the inner lining in it and you turn it inside outwards, and it's going to look really nice. So this is my strap. I got on one side, nice and cute. The white is perfectly, I love it. I think the contrast is beautiful. Alright, I'm going to go over here and do this other strap. Now, you see how I did this on one side, you do it on the other side exactly like that. I'm going to pause the video while I'm doing that. Okay, I have my straps on. They're nice and even, and So I'm going to have to start piecing this the sides together. I'm going to open it up and show you. If you had your pieces together, the lining in here, then you would undoubtedly see all this mess right here. This is why I say let's put a liner in. It looks so much nicer, hides all the imperfections, and gives your bag a beautiful finish. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck my straps down in my pockets on both sides, because I want to make sure I keep them out of my way as I'm sewing the bag together inside outwards. So again, on this side, keep those tucked out of my way. Now I'm going to turn my bag, pretty sides facing each other, and I'm going to line this up, and I'm going to sew down the sides here now. Do not sew this yet. I'll show you what we're going to do with that. So right now, sew the sides down only. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Have a cam. Again, I'm going to match my top as best I can. And this is going to be so stiff, you shouldn't really need to put any pins in here. And you're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Or you can just go on the side of your initial stitch you made. It should work out just perfectly. Top to bottom, remember. Top to bottom. Back my needle up. Well, this thing's away from me a little ways, so hopefully I got my string straight. I'd rather have my top straight than my bottom, because I can work with that. Alright. Just going to make sure that I have it straight. I would encourage you, if you haven't done so, maybe don't use like the full thickness of this. You can split it in half, which is what I did on the other ones, because this really starts to get a little bit too bulky and it's hard to pull through, and these edges sometimes are kind of hard to sew. You just have to go at it a little slower. So I'm sewing inside outwards right over the fuzz. I'm doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm trying to go slow at this because it's really thick. You can see my threads jumping because it's so thick. All the way down. So make sure I trim off that. I'll do this on both sides. I'm just going to make sure that I open it up and that I can't see any of the seams, and I've covered the whole bag. I want to make sure nothing's coming apart on me. It's not unusual if you're using batting as thick as this that it will seem to poke out the sides of your actual pattern. So go ahead and trim that off. It's not a big deal. It's just like anything else. It's coming over and around. Okay. It's just taking up space. Not a big deal. We can work with that. Get this started. Be very careful. This is really, really super thick, and just let it pull its way through. And sometimes you may have to just kind of flatten it as it's going through. Just be very careful. And it's still got some stickies in it, because when we put that lining inside and we iron inside the bag, those are all going to come together. So just follow through. If things don't match it perfectly at the other end, don't panic. It's not really going to make a big deal. As long as you have that 1/2 inch seam allowance and then nothing's coming out of your bag on the side, you're doing good. Again, I'm going to check and make sure that I covered everything in the bag, that there's no loose ends, because I did have some short sections in here, and I just want to make sure I covered everything. Okay, so looks like I did. Now, the edges here. This works the same on everything else. Once you got your bags done, and this is with every little corner that you have like this, you simply just open it up like so. See, it looks like a little mouth, like a fishy. Womp, womp, womp. You're going to get that together, and I'm telling you, this is going to be super tight. And you're just going to go across here 1/2 inch. So match those edges together and get this in your machine and hold that tight as you go from one end to the other. I would say, this is just my personal opinion, I'm going to do it on this one, I'm going to reinforce it when I get through. I'm going to go down the edge, and that's if I can get this thing to go through. Right now it's acting up. So, I'll tell you, this is another reason why I say go ahead and cut. There we go. Go ahead and, when you cut the batting, just go ahead and separate it. It's not going to hurt anything. It will take you some time. I'm not going to lie to you, to separate it, and you might get a little impatient. Don't get impatient. Just work with it. Again, I'm lifting up my foot so I can get the seam. You're not seeing this little seam right here. I'm going to make sure it's flat when it goes through here. Okay. And again, I'm going over that seam, so it's going to be a little tight. So I'm going to let it go slow, real slow, all the way to the end. Okay. Now, cut that off. I still want to go ahead and sew close to the edge again, just to reinforce that corner. But see how it's coming together? So it's going to look really nice when you turn that inside outwards, or the right side actually, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and reinforce this again, just down the side, just so it doesn't come apart on me. Just getting a little bit, just on the other side of that seam I just put in there. Okay, and sometimes when it's flatter, it's a lot easier once you do it the second time. So be careful to go over the middle section. If you want to go backwards to reinforce that edge, by all means, you can do that. Okay. Cutting my strings. I'm going to repeat this on the other side. And then we're going to get to put the lining in. And from there, we will put the zipper in. So again, I'm going to work my little womp, womp, womp fishy. Or gulp, 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 gulp. Well, that's kind of an easy way to remember it. Piece these together. And make sure these are all as flat as I possibly can get them when I work it through the machine. So yeah, this is the tough part I was talking about. When you get to this part, don't get frustrated and take your time, because it is a little super thick, and then plus you got to drive that needle down and get underneath these folds, making sure those flaps are flat when you go across. It's just going to help everything lay down smoother. That's where your pressure foot comes into play. You lay that down on that. So I'm going over the thickest part of it again. Alright. I'm going to look in my bag and make sure that my corners are getting there nice and smooth the way I want them. And they are not. So see how that works out? I'm going to have to go back over that one section and that section. So it's okay. I don't think I was in on 1/2 seam allowance anyway, so I'm going to do that right now. Okay, driving my needle down, I'm going to lift my foot so I can get the fabric to lay down. Make sure you take your foot off the pedal when you do that. You don't want to accidentally hit the gas while your fingers are underneath that needle. Okay. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get it this time, because I went in the actual seam allowance. Okay. So I'm going to check inside my bag just to make sure I have no holes. Perfect. The other side, I can see some light right here, so that means I didn't go in enough. I'm going to go ahead and do the 1/2 inch seam allowance on this side as well. I probably have about 1/4. So I'm going to move it over and go ahead and get the half in here. Okay, I'll put my needle down, lift my foot, and move those seam allowance flat open. Working my way through the thick section. Almost through. Almost to the end. And there we go. Alright. Alright. So, there we go. Got it. I'm not going to cut any of that off. I'm going to leave it there. Alright. So, here's what I'm going to have to do next. I'm going to have to turn my bag back this way, because now I need to insert my bag inside my liner. So we get to go back and forth like this. So super thick, right? So I hope you guys can see that. Alright, now my straps are still inside. I need to make sure those stay out of the way. I'm going to check again just to make sure my boxed out bag is nice, smooth edge. The one good thing about this batting, it does give the bag a lot of strength, where it can stand up on its own like that. So really easy. So here we have all the ugly in there, and that's what the bag would look like if you were to sew it per instructions, which we're not doing. Here we go. This is the fun part. I'm going to take my liner, and it should be inside outwards like this, because I need to put this good side inside here to that good side. So inside here in my liner is my pretty side. So I need to stick this bag inside where my two pretty sides are facing each other. Remember, when you sew, no matter what it is, your two pretty sides face together and you're sewing inside outward. And I know you're thinking, that doesn't make any sense. Dr. Ward, that's kind of weird. Trust me, it'll work. Alright, so here's the fun part. Work that bag down in just like that. Get it down in those corners. The first thing you're going to do is pin the edges first. Now you are going to have a lot of pins. Make sure that your edges, your seams match up together as best you can all the way to the edge here. You're still going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so don't worry if something's not matching up here, just as long as you bring everything up and smooth and it's not kinkled in here. Now you will find that when you work your way around, and I always start by pinning the seams on the other sides, on both sides first. As you start working around, you may say, oh, this looks really bulky, how's it going to work? It's never going to work. It is going to work, trust me. You're going to pin a lot of pins in here so you can stabilize this circle. So, I'm trying to get pins through this. Pardon me. And you just kind of walk it around. Make sure your straps are out of the way, which mine are. Just walk it around and just take your time pinning. And you're just going to pin a lot of pins in here. Remember the crotch area, because it's curved and you have to use pins to stabilize it? That's exactly what you're doing here. If you get any little stragglers like this, get rid of them because you don't want them to show through your bag. Nasty looking. Okay, so I'm just going to work myself around here. Hopefully you can see this. And this should work nicely. If it seems to be buckling up on you, put an extra pin in there and stabilize it, and it will settle down for you. Of course, you're going to have to go really slow to make this work, but it will work. And then whenever you pull your bag through and flip the liner in, you're going to have to press this out. I'm going to show you how to use a little device in here that's going to help you put this on and lay flat and get your stitches around. So anytime I find myself buckling up like that, I'm just going to put a stitch in. A pin everywhere I go. And my focus is going to be on the material, not so much the batting. Don't worry about that. You can trim that off later when you get this sewn on nice and straight, and if you like the way it looks, run your snipping shears around and kind of trim that little batting, the overhang off, because you do want to be able to turn it nicely. Okay. Pinning around and taking a lot of pins to stabilize it. And as you can see, if you're looking down, this side over here is nice and smooth and flat. This is kind of still wavy and wonky. Well, that's why we put a lot of pins in, and I've said this over and over and over, that the pins are, and pinning and ironing are going to be your your best friends. They're going to keep everything nice and neat and in order for you while you're doing your thing. So I'm going to pause because I'm just going to go all the way around here, and it's going to end up fine. It's going to end up just like this because I matched my seams up on both sides first. So I matched the seams up first, and then I started pinning the sides. And the more pins you put in here, the more it's going to be stabilized. And then I'm going to show you how to put this into your machine and sew around at 1/2 inch of a seam allowance. Okay, so I have my bag pin, and I do have a lot of pins. You can see that all the way around. And sometimes I'll loosen them up to take some of the bulkiness out of, well, this thing does not show very well, sorry y'all. I will take and move these pins just a little bit to take some of that puckering out. But as I'm sewing, I do the same thing. When I remove a pin, I keep my fingers and apply pressure, and I don't let up until it's sewn down that 1/2 of an inch, or 1/2 inch on what I'm saying. Been here too long, y'all. Alright, let me adjust the camera back to the machine where you can see it. Alright, so, I don't know if that's autofocused or not. There we go. So under your machine, you have this little cubby section. You can stick your bag underneath there and kind of adjust it underneath and get out of the way, and just line this up. Now you're not sewing over the pins. Remember how I said use your needle on your machine as a stabilizer. You're using that every time you sew. Now I've got it set on my 1/2 inch seam allowance. That's where I'm going to sew it at. I can back it up if I want to, but I'm going to leave it there. And so there I'm on 1/2. I'm going to pull my pin, stick it in my pin cushion. Please get in that habit. I'm going to drive my needle down and drop my pressure foot. And I'm going to go really slow. So if I pull this next pin out, I'm going to pinch this fabric with my fingers, top and bottom, to keep it stabilized. Following it really slow. And stop. Drive my needle down to keep everything. I hope you can see that. Let me see, y'all get in there. I drive my needle down to keep my fabric stabilized as I'm sewing. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull out 2 more pins. With my 2 fingers, I'm going to pinch right here next to this needle. Again, sewing 1/2 of an inch. Stop. Drive your needle down because you don't want this to move on you. If you need to move it, then your needle's going to stay right where it's supposed to be. Okay. Alright, I'm going to move this, stick it in my pin cushion of this one, and I'm going to pinch, keeping it going around and around. Slow down. And stop. Drive my needle down. Now I can pull this around and reposition it, keeping this flat so I can see what I'm doing. I don't want it to run on me. Pulling 1, 2. You see I have these pins very, very close together. I'm going to pinch on the other side of this needle. I'm going to go slow and stop short of that needle. Drive my sewing needle down. I'm going to pull the bag around a little bit more, trying to keep this bulk down and not pulling on it. I'm going to pull this pin and this pin. My pressure foot's down, my needle's down. That keeps everything stabilized. I'm going to pinch right here and follow through. I'm going to stop. Drive my needle down. Pull this around a little bit more. Take this out and take this one out. Making sure everything's flat on both sides. I'm going to continue on to this pin. Stop. Needle down. Always down. Keep everything as flat as you possibly can when you're going through this section. This is why your pins are your lifesavers. You can see through here, it's not jumping or bulking up on me. It's perfectly doing what I want it to do. Again, I'm just removing 2. And you see how slow I'm going after this. I'm not going really fast. I'm not Speedy Gonzales. I want it to be a nice, smooth curve. Stop. Pull this pin, pinch, and go. Put that down. Okay. Now I'm getting on my home stretch here. Take this pin out and this pin and keep my fingers on this one. Keep everything flat. It's trying to buckle up on me because I think I got off where I was supposed to be going. So I'm just going to try to get back on that. Okay. Now I'm back. Pull that needle out. Let's go down this next needle. Okay, drive it down. So I didn't put a needle right here. So I'm pull this and I'm going to pinch this right here and hold it, stabilize it. Stabilizing in between the pins is all I'm doing. Drive that needle down. Alright. Getting around this other section here. I'm pulling one pin out. And it still is trying to buckle on me. If the lining tries to buckle on you a little bit and you can force it to get back straight, maybe a little kink, it's not going to hurt anything. You're not going to see that. In the grand scheme of things, it's not going to do anything. As long as you've got the majority of this nice and smooth. Alright. Take a couple of pins out. I'm at my, so I'm going to turn that down, raise my pressure foot, and make sure that my seam that I pressed open is underneath my pressure foot so it doesn't flop up on me, because you don't want anything that's going to add extra bulk to your circle here. Alright. Almost done. I'm going to take these 2 pins out since pretty much got it stabilized. So I didn't do such a brilliant job getting it straight. So I know I've got a little curve right here, and that could bother me. I don't know how I did it, but I'm just going to go straight. Follow that 1/2 inch seam until I come back into my circle. There we go. It's not a problem. Now I'm even. Alright, so I'm going to get all my stragglies off. And bear with me. Now you can trim the bag if you want to, or you can snip it. So what I mean by snipping the bag is you have a seam allowance here. You can either trim that off if you want to, which is what I do. I just I'll go ahead and snip it like this, right to the edge of where I've sewn. Then I'll go back over this with my shears, and I'm going to go ahead and just cut this excess off because I want my bag to be nice and smooth when I open it up. If you're working with any type of like curves, like on the shoulder, the neckline, and you would do something like this as well, because it helps give the bag its shape in its natural curve shape whenever it opens up. I can stick with this. It's probably not going to hurt anything since I've snipped it. I'll just have to press it a little bit harder on the other side so I can get the zipper in. Alright. Alright, so remember this little hole right here that you sewn? You're going to pull your bag through there. I'm going to set this up where you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so when I started sewing and I put this liner in, I left a little hole right here. And I left a little seam allowance because I'm going to close that up in just a second. So now I'm going to pull my bag through. This is where it gets a little wonky because it's tight. And you don't want to rip your liner as much as you don't have to. So just work your bag through. It's going to be thick because we have all that batting in here. So that's going to make it extra thick. I'm ripping a little bit because I didn't reinforce my seams, but as long as I don't rip it open completely, I can still close it. So this is probably going to be the part you have to be really patient with. If you go down to using just the half the batting, it won't be this tough. This is just because it's so thick. It's just going to do that. Just keep working your bag through, and it'll start coming out eventually. You'll get past the bulky piece, the bulk of the bag. So I'm just working my way through, pulling it through that little hole. Yes, it looks very difficult, but it's really not that bad. You just have to be careful. Alright, I'm almost there. Alright, good. So here's my lining. You see how it comes out like that? When I stuff it in here, everything's nice and neat. I don't need to stuff it in yet because I'm going to go ahead and sew this closed right here because that's the hole I use to pull it through. And since it's already got its natural little hem, because I've got it pressed, I'm just going to go ahead and close that on the machine. Okay. And there's no really need in having pins here because it shouldn't be that big of an opening, and you should just be able to close it up pretty easy. Alright. And this is not going to be a 1/2 inch seam allowance. It's already got that seam allowance in it. You're just tacking it closed. And it's the bottom of the bag, so it doesn't have to be extremely perfect as long as it's closed. Alright, so there's my bag. I've closed it up. So now I'm going to tuck it inside here. And I will have to go over and press all this out to get this nice and even. And once I get my liner pressed here on the edge where I want it, and I get it flat and I trim it up, I'm going to take my iron inside here and press this to the fusing, the batting in here. It's going to kind of compress that down and make it flatter. And I will go around and pin this so I can get it flat. So see how nice it looks inside? We don't see all that bad lining in here, and we just smooth out the edges, the corners that go with the corners in the bag. So this is all going to come together. We're going to press it, and then I'm going to put the zipper in. So right now I'm going to pin where I can see the pink and the white, and I'm just going to just run a pin through it. Nothing major, just to kind of stabilize it so I can go iron this and make sure that my liner doesn't stick out and that it stays in my bag. So I don't have to put too many pins, like I said, in here. So everything's coming together nicely. I kept my straps in here while I'm pressing, and I'll keep it in there when I put my zipper on. Now this is not the conventional way of putting a zipper on, but it works. Trust me. I don't have that big piece hanging out. It's not sticking up, and I can put the zipper right here. When I press this down flat, I can put the zipper right in here. Very easy. You do have to put a zipper in, but if you make more than one bag just because you want to, I'm not going to have you're not going to have to put the zipper in again. You can probably put a little snap or some kind of a button. You can make a little loop here and sew a cute little white button on here, a big button. But right now, I want you guys to learn how to put the zipper in, so that's why we have to do this. Once you've done this, and I'm going to show you how to put the zipper in, it's not that hard, and you'll find that you just once you get used to it, it's really easy. And again, your best friend's going to come to pressing. You're ironing and pressing the bag out, keeping it flat, keeping it straight, keeping all this fluff out of the way is going to give you a better surface to work with. So as you can see, I'm pinning, and it's already getting flat without me even ironing it yet. But I'm going to iron. I'm going to run the iron inside the bag. Yes, inside the bag, and press all that lining and have it stick to the interfacing on the other side. All right, so I'm going to pause for now, and I will be back. Okay, I have actually went ahead and I pinned the bag. I've got the edges nice and smooth, and as you can see inside, I ran the iron. So I laid it down and just took the iron in and out and pressed this all down in here and got this nice and smooth. So the next thing I'm going to do is start pinning on the zipper and getting that ready. Alright, so this is probably going off script. That's fine. When I tell you that it makes a nicer finish to do it this way, it does work. So on the zipper, you have to unzip it. And here, the teeth are right here, and here's the edge of the fabric. So this is the teeth, and I'm working my way around. Instead of sticking the pins long ways through this way, which that's typically how you would do it, stick them in like this way, but it does buckle up the zipper and it doesn't work properly. So just work your way and walk your way around it, and just stick the pins down in there sideways, and you'll be able to still get in there and sew. It's not a problem. Sometimes this will give you some little trouble because, like I said, this is not the best way to go about putting the zipper in, but it's a easy way just to work it around the bag, and you're going to be sewing it from this side anyways, and the foot, we do have a zipper foot, and it's going to walk along this edge right here, keeping the teeth exposed just like that. Okay. First, I like to put it on, just tack it down and see how it's going to close for me before I actually put the zipper in, because I want to make sure that it doesn't go too far out. Like this looks like it's going to go too far out on me, so I'm going to see. And it does call for a 12-inch zipper, but sometimes, see, I'm not even here at the center, so that didn't work too well, did it? So I'm going to back out. I was wondering why it was too long on me. So, word of the wise. Let your seams be your guide. Here's my seam. I want to match my zipper up with my seam right there. That's where I'm going to stick it first. So I'm going to just take it, line it up, and just try to stick it without poking myself, which I always poke myself. And I'm just going to stick it through there until I can start working my way around it. So all I do is stick it through, and it's still pivoting on it, but it's in the center. So that gives me some room to move around. So right now it kind of looks like it's boxed in as a square, but once it folds together and zips together, it'll take form and shape. It's just really stiff right now because I've got that batting in there and I pressed it out purposely, and it went around pretty flat. Alright, so let's try this again. Just going to stick them straight down in there. Well, I'm going to walk it around, stick it straight down in there. Just keeping those teeth barely exposed. And that's what you want to do. And you're going to sew right on that edge. But I'm telling you that this is so much easier. It is so much it's cleaner when you get the bag finished. And you'll be thankful that you kind of went off the script a little bit and just went on your own and perfected the bag. It's okay. A lot of people do it. If you watch the video online, she does it. Let me take this flat now. Good. So I can see that I'm getting towards the end. My little metal piece there. So it's working out perfectly. So far. Alright. Keep sticking that around. Alright. That's enough to test it. Now I'm going to take the zipper. Take the pin out. Since I got my center marking, and I'm going to walk this around this way, and I'm going to take this up just a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Alright, good. So I'm going to just walk in my zipper, trying to keep it straight, keeping that little zipper eye right there in the center. Alright. Make sure I have a little bit of slack where I close it. Alright, so I'm going to walk this around, and then I'm going to just close the zipper with the pins in here just to see if it's going to lay right. And then I'll do any type of adjustments that I need to do when when I get it placed in where I need it at. Okay. So I'm still working my way around. And I'm not using too many pins in here. It's not necessary. Once you start walking that zipper with the zipper foot, it's going to keep it pretty straight. Once you get started, that is. Alright, so I'm towards the end. So I am just going to see if this is going to close up properly before I sew. So I'm just going to give it a little test. I'm going to have to pinch it because it is still flopping open because it's so stiff right now. So, ouch, did it again, darn it. Alright, so it looks like it's going to close. So I've got the zipper tacked down, and that's fine. And here, this little tail, you just simply tuck that down in there. Once you get towards the end, you tuck it down in the bag. You won't even see it. As long as this the zipper mechanism is exposed, you're doing fine. Alright, so now I'm going to put on my zipper foot, and I'm going to change views here so you can see how I'm doing this. So I'm going to pause it for now. Okay, so now I'm going to change out my standard foot and put in a zipper foot. Now your zipper foot is this right here, and if you see it, it has a number 4 right here. Do you see that or not? Has a 4. It's really easy to change this out. This is a zipper foot that can go like either way, whatever side you're on. And should you see that or not? It's kind of glary. And it has like it has a little clamp right here, or I don't know what you call it, like a little bar right here. And that bar is going to hook on to this foot. So in order to take the foot out, there is behind here a little button. So you see this? It's red. Let me see this. This little red button. You just simply push that towards you, and this will fall right out. Okay, and it looks like that for now. So I'm going to get this thing to autofocus in here. Alright, little red lever. Okay, now your foot has, like I said, a little bar right here. That little bar is going to hook on to this section right here. So to get this on, you're just going to have to push in that little red button and put that bar right there and release it. And it should hold it in place. It does for me all the time for now. There you go. And it should slide back and forth like this, because that's what a zipper foot does, depending on what direction you're going. And so mine's always going to be on this side, so I'm always going to sew right here. Same string, same everything. You're just using this. Now I'm going to show you. I'm going to start my bag. Let me get this open. Okay, and I'm trying to gently open it. I always start at the top of my bag where I've got it pinned, and it should be in the center. So again, these bags are really stiff because we've got batting in it. So very carefully, can you see this? Very carefully, I'm going to maybe get to the back there better. I don't know if this is going to work or not. I'm trying to make this, you see it easier. Okay, hopefully you see that. So very carefully, I'm putting my zipper under and tucking it under just to make sure I'm going to get it on there straight before I start sewing. And keeping my bag flat. I may have to come back here. Sometimes I use my scissors just to get that zipper leader underneath there. I push my foot over that way because I have to be able to see the teeth when I'm sewing. And if it doesn't want to work, then start where you can and go back and tack it down. This is being wonky with me again. And they're not the easiest, the zippers are not the easiest to put in. But once you get it started, it'll work beautifully. So I'm going to go ahead and stab it and drop my foot. So now I'm going to start sewing in the front here, and I'm going to keep the zipper on this side. I want to pause and try to move the camera where you can see that a little bit better. Okay, so I've moved it around here. This is my zipper, and I'm always going to keep my teeth exposed. So even though my pins are right now in the way, when I take them out, and the zippers, the foot's going to force the needle to go down and keep the zipper out of the way anyways. So I'm just going to gently just keep the pressure foots down, just make sure, yes. And I'm going to start sewing right there on the edge. Okay? Drive your needle down so that it secures your fabric from moving around on you. When you pull that pin down, you're just going to have to readjust where your zipper's at. So as long as the teeth are exposed, then it's going to sew and it's not going to get all tangled up in your material. So as long as the teeth are exposed, okay? And when that foot goes through, it's going to flatten it out. So I'm going to keep my teeth exposed and then just run my zipper down the edge. So I'm running it down the edge. I'm getting a nice seam. If you probably can't see it back there. I'm just going to keep running it down this edge right here. Okay. I'm going to drop my needle, and I got this string that's in my way, so let me get it out of my way. There we go. Drop my needle. I'm going to go ahead and pull these pins out. And once you got it going, you really don't need all these pins in there. It's just at the beginning because you want everything kind of straight and you don't want it to move on you. So I need to make sure my teeth are exposed, especially right there. It's trying to get away from me. And I'm just going to squeeze while it's working its way down here. Alright. Just want to make sure it's not going to get off track. I'll lift my foot up a little bit just to make sure that I can get that to lay down. There we go. Keeping the teeth exposed. Pulling along the edge. Alright. I'm going to put my needle down to keep it stabilized and pull this out. Okay. Again, I'm going to just adjust. Just those teeth. Okay. I'm working my way to the end. In the end, sometimes it's hard to do. You have to sometimes close the zipper and you have to maneuver it around. That's only because I chose to do it this way. It makes it a little bit more difficult to do. So I'm going to try to get as close as I can to the zipper right here, because I can always tuck that down and tack it in. Okay, I'm going to rotate a little bit. Rotate, keeping that zipper down. Okay. And of course, I'm going to have to close the zipper at some point to get to this corner and finish it, so that's not a problem. Alright. I'm going to trim that off. Make sure you keep your strings out of the way of the zipper. So, there are some places you'll have to turn and tack it down just because of the general area that it's going in. But as you can see, my zipper's going in nice and beautifully. I mean, it's going to look really nice when we get finished with it. Let's kind of back off a little bit. That's too close. I guess that's as far away as it's going to get. So I'm just going to work go on to the next side and get that zipper tacked down on that section over there. Yeah, so that's all you do. I'm going to go ahead and work this section over here, so I'm going to put it in. And because I have, this is so dark, I'm going to go ahead and close this a little bit and just see where I'm at. So I'm doing pretty good, really good actually. So I'm going to open that and finish this side up. Alright, so I'm going to tuck that down in there and start as close to the edge as I possibly can, without that little hook getting in the way. And I may have to go back, and again, like I said, I'm going to have to adjust that. So I don't want to get over. Okay. Alrighty. So I'm not happy with the way that's going. Let me push that down there a little bit more. Okay. Yeah, it's not laying as flat as I want it to. So I'm going to get that out of the way even more. Okay. Yeah, then I have to come back and mess it up. That's when you put the zipper on after the bag's done. I know it is difficult. It can be a little bit more difficult sometimes. But again, once it's in there, this thing doesn't want to slide over for nothing. Once it's in there, it looks really, really nice. And then you just have to go back and catch on some of these edges right here where, like this one's obviously trying to give me a hard time. And I really need for that to be on that side and not this side. So as I struggle, you can see the struggle is real. So if somebody says I hate putting in zippers, now you know why. Okay, now I think I've got it lined up where I want it. Alright. Okay. Sticking in my pin, fishing as I go. Keeping these teeth exposed. Now, if you ever get to a hidden zipper, those are kind of fun. They're not difficult at all. You're just putting it in the opposite direction of what you're doing here. It's really not difficult at all to do a hidden zipper. I've got one on that wedding dress. If you guys want to look at it, that sequin one, it's got a hidden zipper in it. It wasn't hard at all. Okay, so I'm going to keep working my way down. Okay, nicely done. Keeping my zipper exposed. Perfect. Hello. Okay, I'm going to finish sewing this bag. Let me take this out. And I'm going to go ahead and take that out since I'm working my way down, keeping those teeth exposed nicely. Those are pretty whites. Not that kind of teeth, though. Alright. You hear that chop, chop, chopping sound? You're probably, not only is it's struggling to go through all this fabric and the batting, it's just the needle itself is getting a little dull and it made me changing, yada yada, so no big deal. Ooh, I made a little boo-boo there. Okay, so I'm going to continue going on around, and I don't want to connect these pieces because it may not fold up, so I'm just going to go all the way down here until I stop. And this. Okay. And there we go. So, that is how you put in a zipper. And I know I have some little touching up to do on the front top section, but right here I'm going to fix that. But not a problem because you do want to be able to move that around just a little bit. Okay, so right around the top of my zipper is not closing very well, and that's because I decided to put it on with the bag completely closed. So what I'm going to do is work my way from inside the bag as close as I can get to this little doodad without hurting anything, and I'm without breaking anything, that is. And then I'm going to switch over on this side and do the same thing. And then I'm going to close off. I'm going to come over here and trim off this excess right here. I don't know if you can see it or not. This, you can cut that off that's hanging on the zipper, and you can kind of tie this together and give it a little snipping back and forth. So you want to put the metal pieces together, cut off all that, and just kind of sew together. You can do that and just close off. So that's the end of this bag. Really easy. If we run into little problems right here, I'll help you guys out. But other than that, this is bag A, and B's done the same way. I'm going to finish this off and then okay, I have finished my bag, and yes, my straps are a little bit longer because I like it like that. My pockets are nice and secure, my zipper is nice and secure, very easy, and I can close that bag. Now I have to say that there's some things I'm going to have to do here. I had a little bit of a mishap here, so I'm going to have to take and hand sew that. I also like to hand sew the end right here, right on top, just tack that down so that the zipper doesn't go past that. So other than that, the bag's done, nice and neat, and I'll probably follow up, maybe, if I have time, with another little insert for the bag for this. Again, this is bag A. I think it's bag A, looks awful small. And I'll be making more and working with you, so yeah, this, the tutorial lasted a long time, so it was about an hour and a half it took me to make this, and you're in class about that long, so it should take you that long to do it.